Nice. And then. No, I don't like that.
What are you looking for?
I'm looking for. Good. All right, perfect. All right, so I'm going to back up so I'm actually in the camera. Nice. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in and coming to this. Hopefully we didn't insult too many people with the 35-year age. Yeah. To be clear, we didn't make up that number. That is the rule.
It's what science says.
Yeah. So what our goal is to just sort of talk about some of the unique considerations for masters athletes and things that you should take into account with your training as you age. So we'll kind of go through some of the different things that happen as you age, what goes on in your body, some of the physiologic things, different stuff like that. And then really what we want to do is we want to get into some easy exercises that you should make part of your routine in order to make you a healthier masters athlete and make your training more successful. So we'll go through that. If anybody has specific questions, you can throw them down in the little chat thingies, and then we will make sure that we get through and get to those. So throw them down as you think of them so you don't have to do it. And if it relates to where we are right then, we'll jump in and answer it right then. If not, we'll sort of save them up. And if we don't know the answer, then we'll just make it up.
We're pretty good at that.
Yeah. So if one of us disappears off the camera, we're just Googling.
All I have to do is this.
Yeah, there you go. Ashley can just duck.
Phone a friend.
Phone a friend. All right, so I'm gonna close this guy. We're gonna get that up. All right, go for it. You can start.
Are we sharing the
Yep.
sharing the thing?
All right, so if you're thinking about this, all right, I want you to take a second and think about over the age of 35, what you think the most common injuries would be. You don't have to say them out loud, obviously, because we've muted you, sorry. But write them down or just make a mental note of them, and we're going to talk about that. But, you know, chances are a lot of you are thinking about the same types of injuries. And I remember when I was in college, you know, I would hear people say, oh, once you hit 30, it's all downhill from there. And then, you know, people are like, oh, once you hit 35, it's all downhill from there. Everything breaks. And oh, once you hit 40, you know, I just feel like it just kept, you know, that can kept getting kicked down the road. So, you know, there's a reason why over the age of 35, you're considered a master's athlete. And that's because, yes, the body does go through some changes. But, you know, it's also a combination of that. Plus, our job isn't to, you know, move around and exercise anymore, you know, once you've kind of gotten past a certain age. So it's social factors and life factors in conjunction with, you know, what actually happens to your body. So.
All right, I can't figure out how to make this advance. So there we go.
What are we trying to do?
All right, get it.
All right. So we're starting off a little bit. So these guys already kind of kicked it off saying, hey, we're here. We're talking to you about kind of what you should be expecting as you get older, as you kind of age. And what does your body go through? What really happens? What are some of the things that you need to be aware of? Well, when we think about that, you have to think about almost like 3 different things, right? So we talk about muscle strength, what happens as you get older. Well, as we age, no matter what, whether you're moving, whether you're not, we're going to lose muscle mass, right? So if we look at kind of what research says, above the age of 30, you will lose a little bit of your muscle mass per year, right? So that's about 7%, if I'm remembering correctly, right? So we're looking a little bit about, you know, as you keep moving, as you keep doing things, you're losing it no matter what. Right. So I think above the age of 70, that number goes up, but we're not necessarily focusing there right now. Right. So anybody else want to take away? Do the next one. All right. No, you were staying there. We're staying there.
Question ready?
Question. You're making me cry.
No. The take-home message is just that it's going to require more effort to get the same results. That's really what it comes down to. And so hopefully tonight we can help you demystify some of that and unpack it a little bit and figure out how to kind of get the low hanging fruit and best approach it.
Yeah. And I mean, we also have to look at, right, we're talking about differences in heart rate. So as somebody gets older, we're looking at like a 0.7 beats per minute decrease, right, in your maximum heart rate per year, right? So that means that as you get older, your maximum heart rate decreases, what you can obtain as you exercise. Something to think about. We also then look at kind of VO2 max, right? And we see that actually decreases by 7% between the decades of 30 and 70. So if I actually backtrack a little bit, it's between 3 and 5% for muscle mass per year above 30, right?
So unfortunately, physically, you're losing skeletal muscle. It just decreases, and therefore your strength will decrease. And your cardiovascularly, you become a little less efficient. And so just off the bat, you're losing some of your total capacity. But that doesn't mean you still can't be efficient. It's just that what your maximum potential could be is just a little bit less. And so we have to work a little differently.
Yeah. And I mean, think about it. If you weren't somebody who trained early on, but you start training, you still have the capacity and the potential to do more than you were. Right.
So the other thing to look at decreasing is bone density.
Yep.
Right. And so as that bone density decreases, sometimes there's this trend to get into less impactful or less weight bearing activity because there's a fear that your bone density is decreasing. And so you feel like you're going to break. In reality, when you decrease those activities, you increase the rate that bone density decreases.
Yep.
And so one of the things that we're going to talk about is it's important to stay involved in weight bearing activity.
Yep.
If you look at like cyclists or swimmers, even when they're in their 20s, they have like the bone densities of people in their like 70s.
And even cooler, astronauts, before they had all these fancy treadmills, when they would go up into space and then come back down, they would have lower bone density when they went up there because there was no impact. Your muscles respond to force when you stress them, your bones respond the same way. So it's necessary to keep bone density.
Yeah.
One other thing I'll say is really important for people of this age group, only because it hits close to home, because I've been dealing with a calf injury for a long time.
And he's part of this age group.
Yeah. And Justin has a calf injury as well, but his is because you were jumping over roadkill, I think, while you were running.
That was one.
Yes. So one of the areas that we actually lose a lot of strength as we get older, the fastest, is below the knee. So in the calf muscles. The calf muscles are predominantly a power-based group or a power-based muscle group, and they're responsible for kind of really pushing us forward when we walk. They're responsible for a lot of propulsion. And one of the things I always thought about with my grandparents as I got older, a lot of older people are characterized by having a very short gait or a short step strength or step length. And it's kind of like a shuffling pattern. They don't actually get a lot of push off with their toes. And that's because in that muscle group, you lose a lot of strength and power each year. And so it's going to be really important to target that muscle group if we were to kind of prioritize things. So it's just really, really important to point out.
And I was going to say, you could think about that when you're thinking about John's question from before.
Yes, which injuries?
Yeah.
I forgot about that for a second. Apparently memories also goes as you get older, right?
Right.
That's just having a kid.
True. There.
Anybody have any questions before we go into some common injuries?
Anybody need to grab tissues?
No.
Crying?
Thoughts?
Yeah. All right, go for it.
All right. So, John asked the question, what do you guys think are some of the most common injuries seen amongst this population? And as somebody gets older, we kind of have to think about what we lose in the body. So we talked about muscle mass, but we have to think about tendons and muscles probably the most. And we often see in this population a lot of those repetitive stress injuries. So, the acute tendonitis, the chronic tendinopathy, some muscle ailments, and most often we see them in the calf muscle complex, right? And we'll also see them kind of move up the chain. And a lot of the times we'll see kind of like that higher hamstring type of injury, right? I know that many of us have been there, right? And I've seen some of you guys for calf stuff and stuff of that sort. But those are two of the areas that we see a lot of these things pop up. And it's mainly because you're either doing too much for what you have the capacity to do. And that's why we're going to talk a little bit about that strength training and how to prevent that. Right.
Yep. That's
some of the other stuff.
Exactly right.
Yep.
And if you've thought about how you've gotten injured, one of the more common tales that I hear are when you had to do something quickly. I had to run across the road to beat the traffic light, before the crosswalk sign stopped blinking. And, I felt my knee, tweak or my calf go, or, I was outside my, driveway in the wintertime and I slipped and my leg went out from underneath me quickly and I caught myself, but I felt my muscle pop there. Or if you had to run up the stairs quickly to do something, it's usually when you try and go do something very quickly. So it's not that it's just you're older and you're going to break. It's just that we don't train appropriately for the types of motions that are going to really challenge us. And when it comes to strength and exercises, when you do something quickly or aggressively, it puts a lot more stress on the muscle and there's a lot more demand. And unfortunately, most people don't train for that as we get older. And so that's where your risk of injury goes up. If you try and jump, I even had somebody jump off of their tailgate, trying to get mulch out of there this past spring, and, they hurt their calf doing that. So it's those type of things that will really test us the most.
Say adding in more uphill running,
Yep.
right? If you're trying to do a little bit of speed stuff, that all plays into it.
All right, so next thing we ask is, right, what can you do to stay in the game, right? And so the easiest thing is that we want you to try to pay attention to some really simple things, right? And so we'll talk about it in terms of frequency, right? So how often you train, the duration that you train for, and then the intensity of that training, right? So sometimes we will see where people are busy and they've got a lot of stuff going on and someone's just trying to get in and I can't figure out how to admit them. Okay, there it is. And so we're trying to manage all these things. So we might end up with a lower frequency of what you're doing. And then you think, all right, well, I need to get some higher intensity out of it, right? But sometimes staying with that lower intensity, right, but for a longer duration, as we age, can be much more beneficial. We also look into the consistency. And so sometimes as you're younger, right, you could say hey, let's just use a half marathon, right? I'm going to train for a half marathon in the spring, and then I'm going to do nothing and whatever, I don't know, all summer, fall, or whatever. In the following spring, I'm going to get right back into it and train for a half marathon. As you age, training consistently year round becomes significantly more important. And anybody who's taken some time off and not done anything and tried to get back, especially every year that goes by that you try to get back, it gets significantly harder. John's still trying to get back into training.
I'll see myself out.
Yeah.
We see a lot of issues with that. I've coached a lot of kids from high school in the area, and then now they're much older because I'm older, and they're coming to me with injuries now. And I'm like, wait, I remember you when you were in high school and you were indestructible, but they graduate and they join the corporate world or the real job. And then all of a sudden it's like, hey, we got the corporate kickball league coming up, or company softball game is coming up. And so I decided to play because, I'm young and I'm an athlete. And it doesn't matter. Invariably, they do nothing for a long period of time, and then they try and get back into it. Yep. And the same thing. If you try and start an activity that you haven't done in a while, you may want to just practice a little bit first. I'll just leave it at that.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. 100%.
Going right recovery.
Yeah, I mean, so the other thing, and I think if you guys have hung out with us a bunch, you know how much we talk about recovery, how important the days off are. How important it is to make sure you're getting enough sleep and having a proper diet, right? Making sure that you're fueling yourself enough and you're not kind of hindering yourself in many other ways rather than just, getting out and training. Because a lot of the times where we see people's faults fall into play is in this category. You're not doing enough to let yourself rest. You're not doing enough to decrease your stress. And yes, you might feel better as you get out and run, but honestly, taking that time for yourself is probably just as important as doing activity. Right.
Questions about anything? All right.
Okay.
Right.
Cool. All right. Consistency, right? Some reason this wasn't going.
All right, so we'll tackle a little bit more. Everybody needs to strength train as we get older. That's non-negotiable.
Yeah.
We're not budging there. We're sorry. You probably should get comfortable with the weights. So to maintain strength is just going to take a little bit more effort compared to what we used to have to do. So the big question is what? People want to know, how much should I do? What exercises should I do? Going heavier is probably one of the most important things that you can come to terms with, right? You have to be comfortable being uncomfortable. And what we mean by that is the workouts and the exercises should be difficult. You should be sweating. You should be challenging yourself. You should be cursing at us by the end of your workout.
Yeah.
And like Justin said, it's counterintuitive. People say, oh, well, I want to avoid the dangerous things because those are tough. That's only going to increase your risk in the long run because you're not preparing your body for those challenges. And the world around you has curves. The world around you has stairs. The world around you is going to force you to squat down and stand back up, or you're going to have to get up off the floor at some point. So your exercises should be challenging. You should pick a weight or resistance or any type of exercise that's medium to medium difficult, right? I think we'd all agree there. If you're going, effort 0 out of 10, you should be like, 6, 7, 8 out of 10 for a lot of your exercises. You want to do 3 to 4 sets of each exercise, and each exercise should have about 6 to 8 repetitions at minimum if you're going appropriately heavy. And you want to do that 2 to 3 times a week. And so that's really simple. So a medium to difficult effort, 3 to 4 sets of every exercise, 6 to 8 reps, and more than 2 to 3, or about 2 to 3 times a week.
Right. And it's important to do that consistently, right? We say consistency is key as you get older. The big thing is that you want to make sure that you're able to continue to maintain and possibly even make those little gains that are going to allow you to continue to do things like, as John was saying, get off the floor, go up and down steps, go up and down curves, right? As we strength train, the big thing we realize is that the capacity of the body to be able to do things, no matter your age, does increase, right? So you can continue to get better at what you want to do. It just takes more practice.
All right. Well, let's say, oh, doesn't like this.
Oh, sorry.
Right.
One other point that is important to make here. Over time, one of the other important principles for this is progressive overload. What we mean by that is as you go on in duration and time over the course of 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, a year, your weights should not stay the same. The challenges should get harder and harder. And that's where you really make true adaptations and you really decrease your risk of injury is progressive overload, making the muscles work harder over time. So you just do the same 3 or 4 exercises with the same weight over and over and over and over again. In that respect, I think, what do they say? Not because we want consistency and effort, but consistency in the same exercises is actually what's going to kill you.
Yeah. You want to make sure
Not literally.
Yeah. If you do the same thing over and over again, you're not improving your body's capacity past the point that you're continuing to work it out.
Yep.
Exactly. All right.
So
Get into some exercises.
Sure.
All right. So we'll go, there's a couple up on the screen, right? So some of the easy
how
ones,
do we know?
when to top out at a certain weight for some lifting exercises. So there's a couple different ways you can do it, right? So you should be able to maintain good form, right? You're looking to be able to do like 8 repetitions, right? For 3 to 4 sets. So if you're not able to do that, then maybe the weight's a little high, but over time, that weight should just keep going up. There's not a ceiling. You might hit a ceiling where you can't continue to gain going up, but you're not going to get.
And the biggest thing, a lot of people are afraid to challenge themselves in this area, right? We feel comfortable in our comfort zone, but the big thing is that in order to continue to kind of just make sure that you're staying on your path, make sure that you're able to kind of do what you want to do, it's important to challenge yourself from time to time, even if that includes just like standing on one leg, right? Which a lot of people also fail to do or forget that can get better.
And I will say, like, so, we talked about the loss of muscle mass and strength over time, right? And so you're going to train to try and minimize that. Eventually, those two things will naturally butt heads. And so you will find where you can't go up naturally, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that as long as you're working at that level. Any other questions? Does that make sense? All right. So we're gonna talk about some of these exercises, right? And basically what we're looking to have is we want you to have a couple of easy categories built in. So we want you to have some amount of like a weighted carry, right? Some amount of a hinge movement, okay? Some type of squat or like knee dominant movement. We want you to be getting up and down off the floor, right? And we want you to have an upper body push and an upper body pull. Make sense?
Super simple.
Easy, easy stuff. And then because it's so easy, John's going to demonstrate all of the exercises.
Give me about 20 minutes to get ready.
Yeah.
Right.
All right. So basically you can see we've got the weighted carry on, I'm not sure if it's on your left or right, but it's on one side. It's the guy
Okay,
carrying the
left.
weight. Well, I don't know on their side.
Oh, on
which
their
is-
side,
yeah,
that's
Where's
Uh,
the kettlebells? Okay.
right.
Kettlebells are over
So
there.
you're getting a static picture.
John gets to, see, I said we
Oh,
should
you
get
picked up the
equipment.
big one.
I know if I didn't pick up the heaviest one, I was not gonna hear the end of it.
Go ahead, back up,
So, yeah, I do have to back up.
back up.
So a
We'll
weighted
scooch out,
carry-
please.
Is just carrying weight on one side. And obviously safety first, so you can start with one in each hand, but then you eventually want to work yourself up to being able to tolerate what?
Even more.
Even a march, yep, you want to be able to tolerate marching forward, nice and slow, and minimizing how much wobbling you're doing or how much excessive leaning you're doing to counteract that. But this is a great way to challenge your hips, your legs, and your torso and your spine, to make sure that, you know, you're getting all the small muscles that, you know, take care of posture. And, you know, when people hurt their back, which is also one of the common injury areas, you can do that. You can hold a weight here, you can put a barbell on your back, and you can march and walk as well. So any kind of loaded carry is just you're carrying weight for a long period of time.
And one of the things, like we talked about, like osteoporosis popping up, right? What we say is that honestly, a few times a week, you should be training with about 10% of your body weight to help offset that. And picking up that loaded carry, great way to start implementing that, right? And as well as anything else that we might add in.
Next,
Okay.
Step.
Ashley.
Step, are we going? All right. So another one that we go into, I don't think we can see it, right?
You're good.
I'll turn this way, right? Is just basically working on steps, right? So there's multiple different things. If you've ever hung out with us during B3 strength, we've used cinder blocks a ton. It's an easy way to kind of just get things going, and it's a weight too. You know, black workout equipment, great idea. But in the photo, what you see is actually just a step down, right? So what we're working on is kind of just maintaining upright torso, go ahead, dropping down and coming back up. Now, there's multiple ways you can do that, but you could also do kind of a step up, working on balance here, right? So kind of working up and down. The big thing with all of this is making sure that you have proper control. You also get to challenge your balance. Now, if you want, you can carry weights, right? We can hold a weight in front, you can hold a weight inside. But what this really is great for is just working on capacity of the quads, working on capacity of the hips, and making sure that you are, if you're walking, moving, stuff of that sort, able to be a little bit more steady. Right? Awesome.
Great for the larger muscle groups in the lower
Yes.
leg.
Right, which we were talking about, one of the biggest things to do is focus on big muscle groups, the big movers, right? Quads, hamstrings, making sure we're working the core, stuff of that sort. Right?
Nice.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay.
All right. So the other one is lunging. Somehow I got stuck with, right?
I volunteer first, that means I get to pick what I want to do.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I'm just the only one that knows how to work the camera.
That's true.
So when we look at lunging, right, there's a ton of different ways you can do it. And it's something that a lot of people will get a little bit afraid of because of either their knees or they don't like the way it feels on their foot or their toe. But really what we're looking for is just the ability. So if you have any weight, we want the weight touching you, right? Because if the weight starts to come out here, then it starts to affect the way you're balancing fulcrum, and depending upon what you're doing, it could actually act as like a counterbalance and make it easier. We don't want it easier. And so what we're looking for is kind of like a good balanced stance, and you're just looking to drop straight down and come straight back up, right? The bigger the range that you can do comfortably, the better, right? But we want you going into some of these knee dominant positions to challenge yourself intentionally so that if you end up accidentally in that position, you're good to go and you can tolerate it. And lunges, you can make it easier by simply getting your foot onto something. So you can turn it into like a split squat. And so you can prop your foot up here, right? So if I spin sideways here, and then I'm going to come down that way, right? You can make it more challenging by putting your front foot up on it and doing the exact same thing in that position. That's about as many lunges as I can do after this morning's run.
The important things with the lunges, you always want to make sure you're pushing up through the back 2/3 of your foot. Okay, I say it like that because we really just want to make sure you're not lifting your heel up off the ground, because that's when you actually can put a lot more stress on the knee joint. And as we get older, the knee is the largest joint by surface area. It takes a lot of the brunt of the stress as it is. One of the reasons knee injuries are so common is because our hips are so weak. And so that's why it's even more important to strengthen the larger muscle groups around the pelvis and the hip to actually allow your knee to do what it's supposed to do and not have to do additional work as well. The other thing with a lunge is a lot of people have issues with their big toe as we get older, and the big toe is just another joint site for arthritis. And what you can do is you can actually put your foot, I don't know, just if you could lower that a little bit. If you can't tolerate a position where your foot is like this and your toe is bent, all you need to do is get your toes right up against the wall. And now your foot is completely up and down, and you don't even have to bend at that big toe. So it's the same motion. You just drop down and then go straight back up. But that's a really easy workaround. And it's a common complaint when people say, I can't lunge because it hurts my foot and my toe. Well, problem solved. No more excuses. At least not from now.
Awesome.
Okay,
All right. Go.
next. All right.
So these are just ones I threw in there, really important to do. Glute bridges and hip thrusts are really important. Again, we talk about the larger muscle groups in the hips. So a glute bridge is when somebody lays on the ground, and I'm not going to do it because I don't trust how well they sweep around this place.
I'm done. Right.
Ash is going to do. So that's your basic glute bridge right there.
We have a Roomba.
Right. Basic glute bridge.
Double leg. You can lift
Right.
one leg up to make it more challenging as you do this. And then when those get easy for you, you can do a hip thrust, which is essentially a glute bridge with your shoulders elevated on something, preferably something soft. So I'm not going to make you do it on the cinder block. You're too short for that box. We all know that. Oh, wow. Look at that. So that's your hip thrust, and that's what you're seeing in the picture. The other one is just a leg press. It's technically a weight bearing exercise because you're putting force into your foot. Your foot is staying stationary, and it's really good for bone density and also hitting those large muscle groups. So that's one of the machines at the gym that I actually love to work with because you can like make a few tweaks and then tackle a lot of different things with it. So get comfortable on the leg press.
Landmine?
Landmine.
Go ahead.
John's got this.
John's got it.
You have it loaded up with weight. That's just mean.
They're kilograms.
They're bright green.
Yes, they are very much green.
Okay, if anybody's at the gym, don't get scared from the barbells. We love deadlifts because it's another great complex movement that allows you to load your body in those large muscle groups. Unfortunately, a lot of people, well, I should say, unfortunately, they get a bad rap. People say, oh, deadlifting is bad for you. I've heard it hurts your back. The only time you get hurt deadlifting is when you do it incorrectly, or if it's inappropriate for you based on the type of deadlift or the weight that you're using. A barbell is an excellent tool because not to do it like a traditional barbell like you see at the Olympics or even in CrossFit, if you guys know what CrossFit is. But if you take the barbell and you let it hang between you like this, you just hold it with one hand, or sorry, with both hands right in the middle of you, you just drop down and then push back up. As long as you're making sure your hips go back and your weight is staying through your heels, you're actually doing yourself a lot of favors. And you can load this up, you can put a little extra weight here, but this is a little different than a squat because your hips stay a little higher. And so it targets your hips a lot more. So in terms of strengthening the glutes, this is a great deadlift variation. We call it the landmine deadlift. The next one of you might recognize this awesome, amazing, I'm going to say badass gentleman on the right-hand side.
I stopped sharing the presentation so that the video was larger for them to see.
Oh, okay. All right. Well,
But that was up for a second. You're good. You're good.
wait, so can they still see it or no?
No.
Okay.
He's 77.
That's what she's saying? Yeah, he is
Yeah.
77, absolute pure badass. This guy has been in the gym for as long as I've been there. And
Amazing.
yeah, I mean, he's just rocking out those pull-ups. So
Right.
you don't have to stop moving as you get older. That's really the only thing. I look at him and I'm like, all right, you make me feel bad about myself.
Yeah.
So
All right. I think I don't think there's any other pictures on there, but I think another one that I think we really need to talk about is a calf raise, right? So we're talking about losing capacity at the lower leg. And as we get older, we've noticed that there's like a 30% decrease in the overall capacity as you continue to age above like 35. So maintaining strength there is extremely important. So calf raises, we always say, you could do a basic 2-legged calf raise, right? Right, so you're up and down through there, but we could also do multiple different variations. So John's gonna help me out here. So you could do a single leg calf raise, right? Which a lot of the time we like to, right? Put our foot up on something else Stay up nice and tall, arms above your head. This challenges your balance a little bit too, but you're gonna go ahead up, right? Hold it for about a second and come back down. Right, up and come back down. Ultimately, as you get older, you're gonna see that the number that you can do consistently goes down. But as we kind of start out here, we want to see you be able to do about 20 of them, right? And 20 of them, 20 to 25 straight through. What we recommend at first when you start doing this, break it apart in pieces.
Yeah.
Right. Do several sets of say 12 and kind of go from there. This also can fall in that kind of 6 to 8 category. If you start to load it, you can load it with a, with a kettlebell or something like that, keeping it close to your chest, like Justin said. And here we can hold it down to the side, right? And just kind of go in multiple places with it.
I think that's a good segue into something most people call calisthenics or plyometrics. A lot of people talk about that. And so
We're not sharing.
people starting to incorporate some sort of power movement or jumping movement, those are great. But again, unfortunately, we just have to accept the reality that as we get older, our body physiology changes. Certain movements are going to be safe for us. Other ones are going to have a lot more risk than they will reward. So when it comes to plyometrics or any kind of power production, and power is important. Power just means that you're producing strength very quickly, okay? So pogo jumps and jump ropes are probably two of the best types of plyometric or calisthenic activities we can do as we get older. There's a lot more bang for your buck and the risk reward is in our favor. So it's a lot safer to do a very quick kind of jumping, bouncing motion from the level of the knee and below, as opposed to doing something like a box jump or squat jumps or broad jumps or something like that, that require a lot more time. And they may seem like they're quick, but in terms of like milliseconds, a pogo jump is going to take a lot less time. So your muscles are under stretch for a much shorter period of time than they are if you're doing like a box jump or a broad jump, because I got to get my whole body down to the ground and then back up. So without getting too involved and taking too much more time here, yes, plyometrics are important, but something like jumping rope is probably the best thing for us as we get older. So for the master's athlete, I would say kind of ditch the box jumps and squat jumps and err more on the side of pogos and jump ropes. They're going to be a lot better for you and risk is minimized.
Yep. I mean, with pogos, you could do them, right? We always say like multiple directions, right? Small little hops. And we're once again talking about the capacity of the calf muscles, right? So we're really focusing on.
So I think the other thing to get into is basically exercises that make you get up and down from the floor.
Yep.
All right. So a couple of reasons.
Want a demo for us?
Yeah. So Ashley, if you kneel behind John. So the biggest thing is, right, short and sweet, is if you end up on the floor accidentally, it's a lot easier to get up and down if you do it regularly. Okay. But the cardiac benefits of getting up and down off the floor are amazing.
Yeah.
And so one of the easiest things, this comes out of some of Dan John's stuff, is basically just lay down on the ground. And so there's a bunch of different positions. And so the first is to just lay flat on your back, right? And what you're going to do is you're going to lay flat on your back and you're going to just get up as fast as you can. Okay. And then you're going to lay on your right side, your left side. And so I'll run through the whole thing, but then you're going to go down on your stomach and then you go down like into the top of a push-up. Okay. And so that basically becomes one routine. And so you go down on your back and then the goal is get back up as quick as you can, pick one side. Hopefully your keys aren't in that pocket like that. Other side. So you lay on your phone, then your keys. Then you come down on your stomach, come up, and then the last thing you do is come here and then stand up, okay? And basically, like, my heart's going after doing that.
And they want to see it again.
Yeah. And then what you do to challenge yourself is you say, okay, you do it that way. Then you do it with your right hand on one shoulder, the whole routine, left hand on the opposite shoulder, right? Then take your right hand, put it on your left hip, and then the other way. And then you go through that whole thing. And I like to do that as a warm-up before I'm going to do any of my strength stuff. So if I'm going to do a deadlift, squat, some sort of strength workout, I will do that and I'll time it. And you try to get it done as quick as you can. And I'm still out of breath, so I'm done talking.
I was just about to say, he's hopping and popping over here.
That becomes super important because the old commercials, help, I've fallen and I can't get up. You never, I never want anybody to be in a position where they feel helpless. And most of the time, when you're on the ground like that, it's not because you reach a certain age and you can't get up. It's because you haven't practiced being strong enough to produce strength from an extreme range of motion and an extreme position. It's easy to get up from a couch or a chair because all of your joints are in the optimal position to produce strength. But if you're laying on the ground and you're on one side, you have to roll over and then try and get up. It becomes a lot different. You got to make sure your hip gets in the right position and your knee, and you want to make sure you have enough strength to be able to do it for your body weight plus gravity and all that stuff. So it's just like one of those things that packs a mean punch, you know, through and through.
Right. You also get, when you think about it, if you're getting up off the floor from your stomach, you get that upper body push.
Yeah.
Right. So you can kind of throw things in there that kind of throw that all together in one.
Yeah. Any questions about any of that stuff?
Questions about
How
exercises?
many reps did
anything
we get?
like that?
So the routine, so basically, if you run through that whole routine, just do it once. So if you do the lay on your back, so you do the whole thing, and then you do it this way, one hand, the other hand. You go through that once. It should take like somewhere between 4.5 to 5 minutes to run through it. And then as you get good, you'll get down to like 3.5 minutes.
And you want to ease into it though.
Yeah.
Like
Don't
if
try to
if
do
you've
it
never
all
tried
at
it
once.
before,
Right.
this goes back to the frequency, duration, and intensity that Justin first talked about. Ease into it. You don't have to do it every single day. Maybe try it every other day or every 2 days or so to start, and then try and practice it and make sure your body can tolerate it.
Bits and pieces.
Yeah. So I think the other thing that brings into that we, you know, a lot of these exercises is getting you moving side to side, right? Not just forward and back, and in rotational twisting movements, because those very rarely in your daily life is everything going to happen straight on forward and back like that. And so whether you take your lunges and move them laterally,
If you do like a nice, like a side lunge,
yep,
and then come back up.
Right. Or even like a side march,
mhm,
right? Where you focus on kind of being on one leg a little bit more often, right? Or even just a forward march. Right.
Big steps, big generalized broad movements are going to be important as well.
100%.
Any questions?
Thanks, Laura.
Nice.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Oh wait, any thoughts? She asked a question there.
Oh, wait.
Still IT band issues though. Any thoughts? That might get a little specific.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so IT band stuff, basically, like in short, right? Your IT band doesn't really contract. And so when you start having IT band issues, the easy answer that doesn't really give you an answer is that it means that something else is weak and forcing a load onto your IT band. And so then what you got to do is kind of determine in you where that thing is weak and then what you need to strengthen.
Could be the ankle, could be the hip.
Yeah.
Could be a lot of places.
But generally your IT band is sore or an issue because it's doing the job of somebody else. Sort of like me as like a kid, I was always tired because I always had to do my brother's share of all the chores. He was just smarter and better at getting out of them. I mean, I can't fault him for it. Any other questions? So the last thing basically is just other things to consider or think about that might come up and that might be issues. And some of it is medication related, right? So there are certain medications that you might be taking that could affect this. So easy one, right? Getting up and down off the floor. Your heart has to respond to that and your blood pressure needs to change.
Yep.
If you're on a medication that limits your blood pressure from changing, then you might have trouble doing that. You might get dizzy or not feel great as you're doing that. And so you have to do it slower and pay more attention to it.
You might need to take a rest break as you go from one position to the next, just to continue to perform it.
Cholesterol medications. The statins are a very common class of cholesterol medication. They also are very commonly associated with muscle soreness during exercise and resistance exercise. So if you've taken them and you notice that you get extreme muscle soreness or excessive muscle soreness, could be a result of that. You can do a couple things. One, you can just ease into your exercises or spread them out a little bit more. Or yes, you can talk to your doctor and see if there's a different type of cholesterol med that you might be able to take. But that's a question for them, not for us.
Mhm.
Definitely always go to them,
Yes.
right, to ask the questions.
Mhm.
Right, some other ones, just random aside, is there are certain antibiotics that when we work with things such as UTI, you take, right, that actually impact tendon health. And it can actually negatively cause some tendonitis, cause some tendinopathies as you go. And it can become chronic. And we've seen, I'm sure that we've also seen our fair share of ruptures from it over time. Class of medications, I'm not going to try to butcher it. Anyway,
Fluoroquinolones.
Yeah,
Right.
there you go.
That's what I thought.
Cipro
Cipro
is the big
biggest
one. And when the anthrax scare was high in the 90s, that's all that was. I actually went to college with Cipro just in case it was, I don't know.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
Given
it was
the-
like the
don't worry about
2000s.
that.
You
Yeah,
weren't in
yeah.
college in the 90s. Yeah.
So it is a common one, but yeah, we see the risk of tendon ruptures, specifically in the Achilles,
very
stays
high.
elevated for up to 6 months after you stop taking the medication too.
Yeah.
So one of the questions I always ask people when they come in is, have you taken any antibiotics lately, or in the past 6 months or in the past year? Just because I
huge.
want to know. And then if they say yes, okay, which ones have you taken? So it's just something to keep in mind. And so again, Achilles, calf muscles, you want to stay
Yep.
strong there. So those are things we would like to take into consideration. And then obviously, if you have any other diseases or conditions that you've been diagnosed with genetically or systemically, those are things that you definitely want to discuss with your physician, just because they can vary wildly. And some things affect your ability to exercise and recover, and just certain considerations need to be taken.
Awesome.
Nice. All right, so that's all we got.
See you later.
You're right, John.
John's running.
Anybody have any other questions? We recorded this whole thing, so once I get it downloaded and uploaded, I'll sort of shoot an email out to everybody with the recording, so you can rewatch it and take notes if you want. And if anybody has any questions, you could just simply respond to that email when we send it out. Is there a way to get in touch? Yeah. So yeah, Chris, you could just respond right to that email. If you have any questions or anything else, and you can find anything else, through there. There's a whole bunch of stuff about this on our YouTube channel, so you can kind of browse around there and play through that.
Yeah. And you guys are very welcome. We appreciate you.
Yeah.
This is the reason we do it. So
Thanks so
Thanks
much,
for
guys.
coming.
thanks for your time.
Enjoy. Have a great night.
See ya.
Have a good one, guys.
Bye, guys.